Our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by our friends at Zapper, the world's leading augmented reality platform and creative studio, with over 11 years of experience working with the world's biggest brands through Zapper Creative Studio. Zapper also has an award-winning web AR platform, ZapWorks, that lets you create your own mobile AR magic. Finally, check out their Zap Box, the most affordable mixed reality headset on the planet. Start creating AR over at zap.works or talk to them about your next AR project at zapper.com. Good morning, everyone. I'm Charlie Fink with Roni Abovitz and Ted Shilowitz for This Week in XR. Today is Friday, March 24th, 2023. I think we're about show 142, Ted. Good to see you, and
Shocking.
Congrats. I know. Why do we do this every Friday morning? I think someone may be listening.
Well, more and more people are listening. You and I, of course, the last few weeks you've been reporting on South by. I would say a small number of people, not just one or two, said, I listened to your podcast. It's great. I really enjoy it. And then occasionally I'll have a conversation with somebody through my lens of Paramount, and they'll be like, wait a minute, you're the guy that does that podcast? I'm like, oh,
yeah. We're closing in on about 500 downloads on today and tomorrow, and then long tail after that. And I have to say, adding Roni goosed up our numbers a little bit, but noticeably. So Roni has his fan base too. Anyway, instead of bragging on ourselves, we were talking in the green room about artificial intelligence. In fact, This Week in XR was quite long this week because of the Game Developers Conference. Inside baseball, probably to most of my Forbes readers, but important news and very relevant to us. And there was so much AI news, because usually I include some AI news. A couple of weeks ago, I did This Week in AI, and it really requires that to treat what's happening in AI right now, because it's like, 1995, 1996, with .com companies popping up like mushrooms. And I don't mean just a couple of companies. I mean, every day there'd be 2 or 3 or 4 announcements about new startups. I would say the floor was slippery with venture money. Anybody who had an idea for what to do with the web could get funded. And, all these business plans were anticipating advertising revenue, which we know did arrive, but 20 years later.
Right. Yeah, and most of those companies went by the wayside before, the blossom happened. But I was regaling both you guys with a story. So in a few weeks is the big NAB conference, for those that are not in the broadcast industry, National Association of Broadcasters. It's the big movie and TV conference of the year. And it's 100 years, 100-year anniversary of NAB, which is sort of like, wow, that's an interesting lens to look at.
So this is where you go to get the latest Panavision camera.
Cameras, TV stuff, these days it's virtual sets, LED walls,
right,
lighting, big camera cranes, and all the post-production stuff, right?
And drones.
And drones and all the infrastructure, all the data infrastructure that runs this thing called television. So
it's a tech conference.
Yeah, so I've been going there for years through my, various parts of my career. I'm involved in all this stuff. And so I have a couple of big presentations, and then I've started to prepare for it. Last night, I don't know, it was like midnight, and I'm like, I wonder, I got the new Chat GPT-4 all fired up, and I'm like, I wonder if I could just ask it to write an essay on the 100 years of NAB, since that's sort of a lens that I'm supposed to be presenting on, and see what it comes back with. And it is shockingly good. It's like, I'll post it ahead of time. I'll let people read it if you want, but it definitely did exactly what I wanted it to do. And if I was a student in your class, Charlie, I could have turned it in as a paper, and I would have probably gotten a good grade. It's amazing.
I don't assign papers, but in your case, I might.
So I think my next step in the process is to see if there's a place where I can synthesize my voice really quickly, just train my voice, and then let a synthesized AI version of my voice read the thing that ChatGPT wrote at NAB and say, here's where we sit today. What would Walter Cronkite and Edward R. Murrow think about this, kind of thing.
The funny thing about like us as humans, we're feeding our dinosaur eggs to the mammals.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs at least try to protect them. We're just like, here
you
just consume us, next evolutionary thing that takes over. Just eat us now. That's kind of what we're doing. We're
Uh,
so amazed at the thing that's going to surpass us. It's a little frightening to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is, what when I was at South by and Charlie, you were there, I said, the thing that everybody really needs to grasp is that phrase, what could possibly go wrong?
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Anyway,
unintended
it's interesting.
consequences are already going on. We just haven't identified them yet.
Yeah.
So well, let's talk about GDC. By the way, our guest is Steve Zhao. I should have mentioned that at the top of the show. He's the founder of SandboxVR. As far as I know, it's the only location-based VR establishment that has come back from the pandemic in full force. It's not a family entertainment center. It is free roam VR. And so I'm looking forward to getting an update from Steve. Anyway, diving into the week's news, GDC, famous for its deal making and networking. I'm surprised you weren't there, Ted, because this is the center of the universe for the games industry. For
I had a
4
whole
days.
team there. We had a whole team there, and I was living through the MV on it, getting my reports every day. But the Epic guys obviously put on a huge
Yes,
show there.
Epic Games sucked the air out of the room. I would say if I was Unity, I would be feeling kind of ouch, although they made a big announcement with Spatial. So you'll be able to upload your levels from Unity directly to Spatial. I guess they're sort of stepping in with free hosting where AltSpace used to provide.
Dropped off,
And their avatar system, by the way, which we've teased them about, has been hugely upgraded. I mean, it's they use Ready Player Me avatars. They have their own different choices that they give you. So I don't know if you can use Meta Horizons one. Maybe you can. Anyway, getting back to the state of Unreal. Here's the big news. I mean, we knew they were going to build Fortnite into a metaverse, and they announced the tools to, in fact, enable that. Fortnite has 500 million registered users, and 350 million of them are active every month, which probably makes them one of the biggest portals on the web, along with internet, along with Pokemon Go and some other games. So they've introduced a new asset store, so you can bring 3D objects into Fortnite, which is significant because that's the center of the virtual economy.
Yeah.
They didn't get into that much. They threw some red herrings out there, but that's really what's significant. And they're consolidating all their assets inside of this new asset store, which includes Sketchfab and one of their partners, Kitbash, and they're going to put Quixel and everything else in there, the existing asset store. So it may be the biggest 3D asset store on the internet. I think it would definitely be.
Yeah, this Fortnite engine concept where it's sort of opening that world up. Someone will have to fact check my statistics on this, but some of the guys that were there were telling me that now over 40% of the Fortnite play environments are user created sort of offshoots of the original Fortnite, or the Fortnite sort of, the current levels that they're running. And there are now hundreds and hundreds of thousands of independent Fortnite based creation lands.
Yeah, I think they said over 1 million of them. Now we know, 900,000 of them are worthless. But the other 100,000 of them are pretty good. And there are actually major companies which are building a presence inside. It's called Fortnite Creative. They've also, it comes with it one point of friction where they've introduced a programming language called Verse. I don't know much about Verse. Supposedly it's easier than current programming methods, but it's, going to be the thing that allows you to bring interactivity into your world. So you can't really get there without it. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it's supposedly like a low code environment, object based.
I mean, but Unreal Engine is already that, especially if you're just building levels.
Truthfully, I think when you boil it down, what they're really trying to do, Charlie, this is kind of another battle of the Titans. It's going to be, Unreal versus Roblox, right? In terms of who makes the best tools, who makes the most compelling environments, and where will those creators, to your point, that 1% of creators that are going to really find a following and generate real economics and real fervor for their games, are they going to migrate a little bit away from Roblox into this now? And the stakes are big. It's a big play. There's a lot going on.
To your point, I think the biggest news that Epic dropped was they're going to drop 40% of their net revenues back to creators. You just think about that, the scale of what Epic's doing. that is like one of Tim Sweeney's power moves to build the Oasis and to be Halliday, because
Yeah.
think about like this giant pool of money, and it's an equal playing field, and they're basically much more incentive than what you'd find at Roblox or anything else. But it also shows two things. One, the demise of the metaverse is totally incorrect, because look at the numbers happening inside Fortnite. People wrongly called what Meta was doing the metaverse. It was simply a bad thing that Meta made. It is not the metaverse. Epic is much more accurately showing what the metaverse could be. And Tim is putting an economic system. He's a genius game theorist that could really work, right? He's not being greedy. He's putting a lot on the table for developers to make real money. And think about this. Imagine that works. It grows and grows. The endpoint solutions, the XR devices will flow into that, not the other way around. Like, because it's so cool, and there's so many things happening and the devices catch up, he's kind of building the metaverse inside out, not from the endpoint in, but inside with a good economic system that's not crypto.
Right.
I think the ultimately, though, he will come up with a digital currency if this works, that works inside that economic system, not a fake currency on an economy that doesn't exist. So Tim is actually playing a really smart game. And I think people that were like, oh, the metaverse, they were betting a bunch of wrong things, and then like it's all over, completely are missing the point. But last thing here, I don't think it's the social graph that was Meta's mistake. It's game loops. What Tim is showing is that the metaverse is going to be driven by sophisticated game loops, and he's put on the table a ton of money for others to build those game loops into social interactions. That's what people are missing.
Yeah,
that's probably the path to like the real metaverse.
Yeah, and to reiterate the point, when you look at what Epic is doing on their sort of return back to the machine, return back to that user base, the other company that is extraordinary at this is Roblox, that they take a huge amount of their profit and return it back into the R&D system and the build out of giving better tools and a more open ecosystem to their users to build more stuff. So I think Tim has learned from that.
It's a fight, right? Roblox for
they are
the metaverse
really
fight is Roblox Epic, right? It's Roblox Fortnite UE right now.
Yeah, I think that's really what's come down to.
But that's the thing, like people calling it like the metaverse is over are totally missing what's going on. And now blend that with what we see with happening with AI, right? Yeah. Like in-world AI and that kind of thing. Like it's basically really coming together at the moment where a lot of investors are taking their eye off the ball.
We live in interesting times, gentlemen. Let me bring up one or two things. Steve is in the waiting room, and we try and do a tight 15, but Second Life is finally launching a mobile app.
Yeah, how about that?
And
20 years in the making, Charlie.
They're only 15 years too late. They cut their own legs off by doing it. I don't know what else to say. You know, they missed mobile, and then they just kept missing it, and I never understood why that was so. Their Ebbe Altberg, their former, the late Ebbe Altberg, their former CEO, always thought that they never could. They didn't think it would make the game better. But you're locking out essentially a whole new generation of players. And so, but now, I mean, look, there were so many firsts. That's the thing. There were so many firsts. How the heck did they miss this, right? They were the first social network. They were the first true metaverse. They were the first digital economy, and they are the last to introduce mobile.
But that's a classic example of the innovator's dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Even in a newfangled world like Second Life, when you build an entrenched system that you are comfortable with and you are profiting and people are using it in the way you think they should, when the world turns another notch, you miss it. This is not a singular problem to those guys. It happens over and over and over again, where the company that started it all never fully capitalizes on it because they don't know how to allow themselves to innovate, to actually be the startup within the startup. That's the thesis. It's interesting. So it's not surprising to me.
Okay, pivoting back to AI, and then let's get to Steve. Luma AI. They make 3D out of 2D photos, and the participants in their $20 million round are impressive. They've got NVIDIA investing. They've got it was led by Amplify, which makes a lot of immersive category vertical investments. General Catalyst, and their existing investors. They raised 4.3, so a couple of years ago, making the whole deal come to about 25 million. So I don't know how far they're going to get with that cost of entry. We talked about this last week. You need like $1 billion, but $20 million is still enough to get a startup building momentum over a couple of years, which they all have to do today. But, I like this company. I like what they're doing. I do think that, whether or not people want to navigate the world like they're navigate the internet like they're navigating in Fortnite, they will definitely want to see and interact with more 3D things. All the products, the e-commerce sites are going to be 3D. So not a bad timing and not a bad play. But again, an example of the velocity with which these new AI companies sitting atop GPT-4 so they can use their large language model and just customize it for their application. In fact, one thing I wanted to mention was Adobe introduced something called Firefly, which is integrated into their workflow. So, I think there are a lot of startups that will have to pivot because of that.
They're in the game too, right? Everybody that thought, oh, we don't have to worry about this is like, we better worry about this.
Isn't it surprising how fast people are getting into this game? It's like, It's not years, it's months.
Yes, it's the velocity of it is really surprising. But every time one of these companies launches and I figure out what their what their plan is and what vertical they're addressing, I always feel like, or I have felt like over the past few weeks, that makes sense. Well, and then you see so many of them. It's like, is this guy a competitor? That one.
Well, a good metaphor. I don't know if we used it on the show last week, but I think, or I've talked about it with some other folks. Is when a vertical spikes up so quickly, what happens is you get the big crater hole in the middle, right? It's actually a volcano, and there's a lot of stuff that's going to go into the volcano before it's all over, all said and done, right? So,
well, one quick comment. Visual. Charlie, because you brought up Firefly with Adobe, like it really begs the question: is AI a product or is it an amplifier? Like it's amplifying the Adobe Creative Suite. What OpenAI is really doing for Microsoft is amplifying Office. So like, is it the thing, or is it the thing that amplifies existing services and go-to-markets and customer bases, which is a really intriguing problem for startups? Because if you're an AI startup, you're like, I've got AI. Is that the thing? Or it's like, I've got an Adobe Creative Suite powered by AI. I make a spreadsheet powered by AI. So it could be that the startups are in a really tricky place, and the established companies who could rapidly integrate AI in the back end, maybe they're the ones that are going to be the beneficiaries. It's going to be very strange and interesting to see what happens. But the speed at which Adobe and Microsoft are integrating tools that startups are claiming to have, and now, like, how do they compete with the marketing and the channels and all that? It's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of an extinction event coming soon for a bunch of players, but it doesn't mean AI is not good. It just means an extinction event's coming.
Yeah, it's a longer topic. We should maybe table it for next week's discussion. But the idea of studying, and I'm reading some really interesting articles about this, about the interdependency of the technology base and all the companies that are effectively building on top of the same thing. You get so much duplication of services and deliverables. And it's almost imperceptible to determine who's doing what and what their differentiators are. And it starts to become a huge problem. And it's just what used to take years to get to that point where we have 7 different versions of this particular application are now taking months or even days to get there.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
Let me give you an example. The Leia pad, which I have sitting next to me on my desk, which is a loaner unit. It costs about a demo unit, it costs about $1,000, and they have Stable Diffusion integrated into it, but not just any Stable Diffusion, it's 3D Stable Diffusion. So you ask it the same queries that you do on Stable Diffusion in 2D on the internet. It's giving you, it's built into this, and it has Stable Diffusion, and it gives you 3D, which is kind of amazing. It shows you again the power of that technology, but also how they're integrating it into what is essentially wants to be an everyday device. So talk about the velocity of how it's just getting integrated into everything. Anyway, let's get Steven here.
Okay.
I don't know. He's based in Hong Kong. I don't know whether he's in the States right now. He probably is because of GDC.
Maybe GDC. Yeah, sure.
Roni, you guys must have sent a ton of people to GDC back in the day from Magic Leap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We used to tons.
Hey, Charlie.
Steve,
Hey, Ted.
welcome. Great to
Hey.
see you.
Hey, Ronnie. Good to see you too, Charlie.
Are
You
you
guys.
are you in San Francisco?
I'm in San Ramon, close by. I was at GDC.
Yeah.
That's what we figured. We were speculating that you were probably in town for GDC.
How was it? What was your experience like there? We were talking about it a minute ago, but none of us were there.
Well, it's great to meet a lot of folks. I've been in the game industry for over 15 years, so a lot of familiar faces. I think it's just very exciting how games has really shifted over the last decade, and it's accelerated. It's a little bit more. I think now it's sort of like there's just sort of like an unknown of where games could be, especially with AI being forefront. So I think there's a lot of excitement and probably mixed with uncertainty in the air. That's how I want to describe it.
How do you, I mean, it's just there's so many places in the both in the production pipeline, the creative pipeline, as well as in the game itself, that where AI could fit in. I think Ted Roney just mentioned InWorld. I don't know if you got a look at that. That's the AI for NPCs, which, you know, we've been saying is going to really transform games just on the face of it, right? Because now in a game like Fortnite or in a game like Grand Theft Auto, you can now give the non-player characters could add a tremendous level of complexity. In fact, they may get good enough pretty quickly that you can't at least immediately tell whether they're AI or whether they're human players.
Yeah, it's the Ryan Reynolds movie Free Guy come to actual reality now. It's really happening, baby. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting. It had a booth at the expo, the end of the escalator, so pretty prominent. I think that's probably one of the areas people are excited about is, NPC characters in a way that you can distinguish from, NPC or actual players.
Yeah.
Well, let's not digress. Let's talk about Sandbox VR. I mentioned before it's a free roam system that essentially is retail VR. It's pricey, but I think that strategy seems to be helping you make the kind of revenue that allows you to not only sustain your current stores, but build new ones. So I'm interested to hear about the difference, why you're succeeding, why while others had failed, but also since most of our listeners have not seen a Sandbox VR location, maybe you can describe what it is and the kind of experiences you offer.
I would say the closest thing to Sandbox VR is it is like being inside the Matrix. It's full body VR with your friends. And once you're inside our experience, customers actually tell us that they don't think it's a simulation. To them, it's real life. And it's highly social. You can physically interact with friends. And we've created experiences that actually encourage, customers to be social, communicative, and really play around with that element. And once people comes out of our experience, generally, which is about 30 minutes long in VR, they get these highlight videos. So they're auto-generated videos that kind of blend between real life and VR. That's easily shared across messenger apps or social media platform, and that's kind of been helping us with our virality. So that's kind of foundationally what Sandbox VR is, and I think the reason why we've been successful is I think we found like a tremendous product market fit that people, when they go out to play, in the end of the day, it's not about touching a wall or feeling fire. It's not being like a VR arcade shooter. It's really about having a great time with your friends and family. And that's what our content really focuses on.
Steve, there's a lot of there were a lot of other players attempting the same location-based VR. Many of them are gone. I won't name them. You probably know who they all are. And I know you don't want to talk about your trade secrets on why it works, but the parts you are willing to talk about, what do you think you made different that others who attempted location-based VR were unable to pull together?
I think I think the idea makes Ronnie, like, how the company started, we never wanted to be in retail. Our DNA has been building games, but when VR first came about, one of the learning lessons that I had with mobile games is you should build for the future, don't build what's popular now. So we try to really think through what do people want in the next 5 to 10 years. And to us, it's like people want the matrix, they want the holodeck. Can we build that? And we look at all the technologies, like, we could, but it could not exist inside the home. So that, idea maze led us to creating something that is retail based. And because we care so deeply about experience, and about, the gameplay and the socialness and everything around that, it turned out to be something that people really wanted.
So Steve, you would say you sort of have this long tail vision from the arcade model into the home model, which is not necessarily a new thesis, right? Were many folks, let's use Atari as an example, right? Started in the arcade, realized when there was enough power to deliver this into the home in a viable fashion, they migrate to the home, right? And their business sort of explodes. Nintendo.
That's actually not a long tail vision. I don't think this can exist in the home. I think it's the opposite of being an arcade. Because
Okay.
an arcade technology was not advanced enough, so over time you can actually bring an arcade inside your home.
Yeah.
But what we're building is not fundamentally one technology. We're taking VR, we're taking motion tracking, we're taking wireless. In the future, we're looking into machine learning and AI. It's a combination of technology that makes everything work. And I think the home VR market is trying to tackle something else, which I believe is like they're trying to be very accessible these days, but they sacrifice immersion, like true full body immersion. And our business is retail, so it's not as accessible, but we double down on immersion. So
No, I just thought you said you were seeing the bigger vision, but so it sounds like your long vision is to actually stay out of the home and continue to evolve that simulation experience. And within the world of full disclosure, we're partners together. So we have our Star Trek IP and experiences in these Sandbox VR experiences, and they are really great. And we get great customer feedback, not just from the experience itself, as you know, but the whole journey of how you enter into the retail environment, how you doff and don the gear, and then the social experience of how they're filming you as you're doing it, and then they send you links so you can post your experiences to social media. You kind of do the round trip. But I actually had a misconception. I didn't realize that your true long-term vision is to always stay out of the home. I thought it was actually to migrate into the home, but
I think actually, not to answer this for Steve, but there's really a theory behind this, which I think is very strong, which is that you need an organizing principle for multiplayer games. I see we have all these mobile companies have tried for years to sync up smartphones so that two friends could play a game together, using their devices that they already have in their pockets. In fact, there's a device that I'm talking about right now that takes advantage of every piece of hardware on the iPhone, which gives you a sense of how powerful that is and how it's going to work in mixed reality. But setting that aside, my point is that it is hard to organize groups of people. There's a lot of friction there. And even if the hardware that they're wearing is the same that people are using at home, they don't have the full body tracking for enhanced embodiment and immersion, and they don't organize you together. And I think there's a lot of friction there, especially today when people are not together that much. They don't, most of the socializing takes place online. It makes a synchronous activity like this a lot more powerful. And so I think by focusing on the location based and the differences, because it's going to be a while before we have reasonable full body tracking at home. I think there's a real competitive advantage there and offers something that, I think people would be excited about and recognize immediately, oh, this is different.
That's exactly it, Charlie. It's the organization of people coming together, and everyone's house is different. Not every house can support kind of even a small free roam space that is reliable. So that's what Sandbox is. It's a home for people to come together to just play experiences together and have a great time.
So, of course, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is the two main friction points in location-based VR, which is throughput and utilization. So how do you handle all those hours during the week when people are busy doing other things?
For us, is we're incredibly we've since the pandemic we built kind of at the store level highly like very high margin business. It's if you think about it, our biggest expense is labor and rent, right? We've been very good on working with landlord to find very competitive deals, and we've been very good learning how to optimize our labor. And the biggest thing is, you know, the way after that in terms of like how we basically we don't need that much occupancy to be profitable. Every locations that we have in terms of occupancy, like the utility rate of a location, yeah, and every location that we've opened is profitable. So it's just something that we've
So
created.
you're
It's
saying,
like
well, you're saying that it behaves like a movie theater model. Yeah, I mean, Tuesday during the day, you may not have that many people, but the high utilization on the weekend makes up for that.
much.
How
Even
many?
though we do have daytime, especially with a team building, that's something that has been happening more now, where
Mhm.
where the world's kind of coming back to normal. But yeah, the weekends and the off, the night times are, that in itself alone is enough to take care of every location.
How many locations do you now have worldwide? What's the
35.
35? And
Well,
are you doing flex pricing to sort of manage demand? Is there like a peak pricing time, nights, weekends, and daytime during the week, lower density? Do you actually lower the price or do you keep it all the same?
Generally not really, because people that have time to play during the weekdays generally are less sensitive about pricing.
Interesting.
once you offered tiered pricing like that, you're saying that your experience is worth the lowest price.
You're
That's the
50
problem
down
with
the road.
discounting and specials. You get a short-term
Yeah,
burst, but now you've undermined your value proposition.
you get it, Charlie. That's it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well,
Even
I was chief operating officer, as you remember, for a chain of unsuccessful location-based VR in the 90s.
It's hard.
It is.
Stephen, one question. Do you think like many sports or scuba or things like that, people get their taste of it through you, but are they going to want to gear up? Do you evolve into a place where I get it, and then I want to go home with the suit, the highest end headsets, gear up, so I have my own gear to either come and play, like I have my own, like people might have their own golf clubs or scuba systems, and they spend thousands and thousands tuning these things to be really really high fidelity. And I just wonder, do you think VR XR heads in that direction where the real enthusiast, like someone playing golf or baseball or football or scuba or sailing, wants their own stuff, they want to fine tune it? There's a whole industry of all these like high end things, because as the experiences become photorealistic, AI based, they'll just start to take on the same material nature of like what it means to play golf for a day, or what it means to go scuba in Australia, which could be like a $20,000 endeavor. I mean, do you see that, or do you see it's more of like like laser tag, where it never really took off into that kind of cultural phenomena?
I mean, we think more generally about the VR industry. In order for people to want to buy gears and really care about, kind of gearing up, you first have to create like a killer hit. You gotta like a killer app first. People must love it. And they must love it even without the gears. And they love it to a degree, and there's a community built around it that people will start, spending more money for that app. So can VR create these killer apps? I think it's possible, but it's really hard to do. If you look at like the consumer VR, there's probably only, I would say, a few of them that are killer apps, right? So I'm not sure, is it because of the headsets, allowing that, or maybe the friction of being inside a home where, once the consumer's inside the home, they have a lot of entertainment option, would they put the headset first, right? I'm not sure it's because of that. But yeah, there could be a world, but you gotta solve the app first. That's the short of it.
What are your experiences in the venues now, right? There, as I recall, there are several to choose from, and each venue is sort of like again, a multiplex movie theater where you can go in and see one or see both. What are they?
We have 6 titles today. The way we started is we started with a lot of shooting experience. So Deadwood Mansion, you probably played that before, Charlie. And an Amber Sky that takes you to space. So that's how we start. Now we're moving away from just purely shooting. It's all about expression. So we're launching a new experience this summer, where you have to utilize more melee weapon and you can cast magic with your body movement. And of course, at the end of this year, we're going to launch Squid Game, and
Mm.
that has no props at all. But that is going to be it's going to be a pretty incredible
That
experience.
makes sense because, it's Simon Says. It starts with Simon Says and then goes from there.
Yeah, and for us, the thing about Squid Game really kind of showcase how our technology is different from other is you need like full body tracking to make this work. And a lot of location-based companies don't even have that technology.
That is exciting. I'm really looking forward to that.
Charlie, have you been to the mall? Is the Topanga location still open, Steve? The mall here? Yeah. So it's
I
not
have
that
not
bad,
I
Charlie.
have not gone out to Topanga. There's a mall in Silicon Valley that's probably right between Silicon Valley and San Francisco that I went to.
Okay.
It was pretty new. I did a pirate experience.
Yep.
I think it was one other customer because it was during the day, and then two of the employees who were hanging out there jumped into the sim with me so that we had a good multiplayer
Round
experience.
it out. Yeah, yeah.
And it's long, first of all.
Yeah,
It's
these are
long.
serious.
It's like a full video game. It's 25 minutes, 30 minutes long. So you never, in most location-based entertainment wants throughput. So they give you a 10-minute experience and maybe a 5-minute pre-show. They want to shuffle you through there as fast as possible. But this is different than that, which is good. It allows for a lot more storytelling. But my feeling was at least those experiences, and now we're talking, good gosh, Steve, probably 2019. So I imagine the technology and experiences and your knowledge of and your experience working with customers has probably evolved them.
The biggest change for us is we've successfully transitioned to wireless streaming very reliably. So back then, Charlie, you were wearing like a VR backpack. So that is gone now. And that is very foundational shift for a couple of reasons. It actually helped our operation improve even better. Guest experience is highly improved. You don't sweat as much, even though you still do, especially with the zombie experience. Um, we can actually have a much younger demographics if you don't have to wear a backpack. So we can start creating more family-friendly experiences for parents and kids to play together. So that's how we're thinking about evolving. It's just taking away all the props and all the gears so that you can basically immerse yourself as if you're that character.
What technology are you using now for the headsets and the tracking?
We're using HTC Vive Focus. That's the one that has capability for the wireless streaming for 6E, Wi-Fi 6E. Tracking is still right now is a passive tracking that you've seen before. We're going to switch to active tracking over time. But I'd imagine in the future, there will be a day where we can utilize AI and machine learning that it doesn't even need trackers. You can just walk into a deck and you're fully tracked.
Yeah.
So Stephen, if you're using the Vive now, like what do you want it to become for your use? Like what do you want VR manufacturers like to turn into? Like what's missing? What could be better? Maybe like 2 or 3 things. You never know, someone could be listening. It's like, okay, we'll do that.
We're seeing a lot of great things. I mean, for us, I think foundationally is how do you keep pushing the fidelity of experience.
Okay.
For us, that's very important because that correlates to immersion. But more so with wireless streaming, as a business, you can actually create like very strong servers. So you can actually push the boundary of production quality. So
So
that's
like
one of the
better
things
field
that
of
we want to do.
view. So field of view, like really get into like, natural human eye resolution, so that it's indistinguishable from like, an HD. If you go to like a 4K film or something like that, you're sort of getting to that level or better.
Yeah, it's like Retina for the headset. And then you combine it with a very strong, powerful server, so you can actually utilize like very high quality graphics that is almost indistinguishable from real life. That's kind of like how we want to evolve our content.
I'm curious if you've had a chance to look at the little micro headset from Big Screen, which is super high fidelity. It takes a step back in terms of what your overall needs are because it's still a tethered headset, right? That has to attach to some sort of PC right now. But the fidelity and the comfort is a whole nother level beyond what most developers are bringing into the market these days. I'm curious if you had a chance to see it yet.
I did. I got a chance to meet the CEO and at the GDC, and I think it's super interesting. I think for us, because you're playing just 25, 30 minutes, the comfort is important, but I don't think it's as important as consumer market where someone might want to play for 8 hours straight, and that headset will be very good for that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So Steve, well, actually, this is a question for you, Ted. Star Trek Experience has been in Sandbox for, I guess, about a year.
A number of years, actually, many years.
So what is the story that we act out in the Star Trek Experience?
So it's been okay. So it's been pre-pandemic since I actually did it with my daughter. So you'll have to let Steve kind of remind me. You're in a Star Trek experience, like you're in the Enterprise, and then you're in sort of moving around, and you go down to the planet's surface, and there are these kind of giant squiddy sort of monsters that come at you and attack you and stuff. And it's actually quite fun. But the love and lore of that IP and that brand is so strong. That it requires a certain amount of responsibility and care. And they did actually a really good job of managing the IP well. People really enjoy it. We get a lot of good feedback on it.
Yeah, for us, it was like, what are the fantasy fulfillment that we can deliver? So naturally, you can beam to different planets, and of course, we have haptics with that, so that feels incredible. You play with time and space, or separated into different areas in VR, even though they're next to one another. You got to use a tricorder. Like, what does it mean to search the environment, kind of try to find out clues what happened, and then of course you get to fight Klingons. You know, so these are like fantasy fulfillments that we want to do generally with all IPs we work with. Like, what do like fans really care about, and how do we double down on that?
Is it your most popular experience?
Zombie is our most popular one by far.
Wow.
So the first one is called Deadwood Mansion. We actually launched a sequel last year, and it's selling like hotcakes.
Yeah, I've done that too. Zombies never disappoint, right? It's always a good experience. Last time I was there, also there was a movement. I don't know if it's continued to evolve into actually competitive gameplay. There was kind of like a katana sort of thing where you actually would build up your skill and earn points, and then you could compete with other people. So it was a bit of an esports thing. Is that still moving forward? Is that still popular?
Yeah, that's called UFL. We look into esport, and we try to make that work, and we realized that it's hard to get product market fit with esport because the cost of doing that is a sandbox ticket price, right? Just too much friction. I think any esports need to start from a very low friction area first, and we don't have that. So it's another learning experience there for the sandbox platform that we're more suited to create experiences that's more narrative, like kind of like being inside movies and trying to create something that's very competitive.
Right. Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because the idea of like people bowl, and then they like, if they like it enough, they join a bowling league and they try and compete and they try and get better. And we saw that with the success of Topgolf, right? They sort of gamify the game of golf in a way that takes it to scale and is super successful, right? I mean, it's a massive success of tapping into people's kind of competitive spirit. So it's interesting it was interesting to me that you were experimenting with it, but it's also interesting that you were learning about the price threshold dynamics of it and how people, will tap into it or not.
I think the competitiveness, like with Squid Game, would be like super interesting. It's like it's a game you can play together that you also have a high score, and it's more like casual competitiveness. That's what I would call like Squid Game that we have, and also like Topgolf. But like the really hardcore esport that people are gonna play like 1,000 times, yeah, I think it's really hard with location based.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I think that relying on known IP, and zombies are kind of like an IP because you know what to expect, is always going to be great in location-based entertainment because people don't understand what the original titles are. Right. So if you're going to choose one and you're standing there, you're going to do this experience once, you're going to choose something that you think you know something about. So everybody loves Star Trek. Everybody knows what happens in a zombie movie. So I think it's a smart strategy to look for those kind of compatible IPs. What are the other well-known IPs that you have other than Star Trek and zombies?
Outside of what's coming out,
yeah,
the other most popular one is Amber Sky. That is our sci-fi one, and it alludes to you too. I think sci-fi, if you have like the alien kind of conquering Earth, it's also something that people have seen or or watched before. So there's a level of familiarity with that. But I also attribute that also to the gameplay itself because you start from a elevated platform on Earth, and it takes you all the way up to space after you fight the aliens. So that transcendence with VR is incredible, and people love that.
Yeah, great. I think that's true of any VR experience, actually. One thing we didn't get into, and unfortunately we don't have time, is your background as a game developer. And I think I wrote a Forbes story on how you came to start this company. So interesting. Congratulations on your success, where so many people did not figure out the formula. So the fact that you're having this kind of success and you've opened so many locations is a real sign that this is an innovation and is different than what has come before. So that's our show for this week, everybody. Thank you, Steve, for calling in and joining us for half an hour. Ted and Roni, I will be texting you during the week, I'm sure, and we'll see everybody back here next Friday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.